Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy, even when you're lying still in the dark. Right now, as you rest, billions of tiny signals are quietly moving, sorting memories, softening emotions, and preparing you for tomorrow. That's unexpected for most people. We tend to think of rest as empty space. But psychologically, rest is when the mind becomes most gentle, most flexible, and most receptive. Scientists have measured this using brain scans, sleep studies, and decades of psychological observation. They've watched how attention slows, how memories loosen their grip, and how emotional signals grow quieter as the brain shifts into nighttime mode. What they've found is reassuring. The mind doesn't shut down at night. It simplifies. It stops arguing. It stops predicting so loudly. Patterns become softer. Thoughts grow less demanding. The brain chooses efficiency over effort. And that's where we are now. Nothing here needs to be solved. Nothing needs to be remembered. Each idea will arrive slowly, repeat gently, and then fade, just like a thought that no longer needs attention. You don't need to picture anything clearly. You don't need to follow every detail. You can listen the way you listen to rain, or a quiet fan, or a familiar voice in the next room. Tonight, we'll move through the most relaxing facts psychology has uncovered. How your brain edits memories to reduce stress. Why emotions soften at night. How attention drifts without effort. And how your sense of self gently loosens as sleep approaches. This journey has no rush, no test, and no destination to reach. Just a calm rhythm, steady facts, and a mind slowly settling into rest. Before we start, subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. Now plug in your headphones, and let's drift into this amazing topic. Your brain does something very specific each night, and it begins long before you fall fully asleep. As the light around you dims and your body grows still, the brain quietly changes its priorities. During the day, it is focused on action, decision-making, problem-solving, and responding quickly to the world around you. At night, that urgency fades. The brain shifts into a mode that is less about doing and more about maintaining. Scientists have observed this shift by watching patterns of activity slow and reorganize. Areas responsible for planning and constant attention begin to quiet down, while regions involved in repair, sorting, and balance become more active. This is one reason thinking feels different at night. Thoughts may wander more freely, emotions feel less sharp, and worries lose some of their edge. The brain is no longer preparing you to react. It is preparing you to recover. This change is not random or accidental. It follows a rhythm that has guided human sleep for thousands of years. Even if you resist sleep, your brain still begins this transition. It lowers the volume on outside demands and gently turns inward. This inward focus is the first sign of the brain's night shift, a state designed to protect your energy, preserve your memories, and restore your mental balance after a long day of effort. This shift happens quietly every evening, regardless of age, mood, or circumstance, forming a dependable biological pattern the brain has practiced across generations for human survival. One interesting fact about this nighttime shift is that your brain becomes more focused on maintenance than on learning new information. During the day, your brain is constantly forming fresh connections as you absorb conversations, tasks, and experiences. At night, those new connections are reviewed rather than expanded. Researchers studying sleep have found that the brain replays patterns from the day at a slower pace, strengthening what matters and weakening what does not. This process helps stabilize memory while reducing mental clutter. It is also why studying late at night often feels harder, even though recalling familiar information may feel easier. The brain is not trying to take in more. It is deciding what to keep. This gentle sorting process supports emotional calm as well. When memories are revisited during rest, they often lose some of their emotional charge. The brain keeps the information but softens the feeling attached to it. This is part of why problems can feel less intense in the morning. Overnight, the brain has quietly worked to place them in a calmer context. This maintenance-focused mode allows your mind to recover without effort from you, simply by slowing down and letting the process unfold naturally over time with no conscious direction required. Another important change during the brain's night shift involves energy use. Although the brain remains active, it becomes more efficient with its resources. During waking hours, different brain regions compete for attention and fuel, especially when multitasking or under stress. At night, this competition eases. Brain activity becomes more synchronized, meaning regions work together instead of pulling in different directions. Scientists have measured this through brain imaging, noticing smoother and more rhythmic patterns. This efficiency reduces mental strain and helps explain why nighttime thinking often feels softer and less demanding. The brain is no longer trying to manage multiple goals at once. Instead, it focuses on stability. This also supports physical rest, because the nervous system sends fewer alert signals to the body. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and muscles relax more fully. All of this begins as part of the same shift in priorities. The brain is conserving energy, not because it is weak or tired, but because it is preparing for renewal. By simplifying its activity, it creates the conditions needed for deep rest and long-term mental health over many years of life. A fourth fascinating aspect of the brain's night shift is how it changes your sense of time. During the day, your brain closely tracks minutes and hours, helping you plan, schedule, and anticipate what comes next. At night, this timekeeping system becomes less precise. Studies show that areas involved in monitoring time and deadlines reduce their activity as sleep approaches. This makes moments feel longer or blur together, which can be surprisingly calming. Without the pressure of exact timing, the mind feels less rushed. Thoughts drift without needing to arrive anywhere. This shift also helps explain why worries often lose their urgency late at night. When the brain stops measuring time so strictly, it also stops pushing for immediate solutions. Instead, it allows experiences to simply pass. This relaxed sense of time supports emotional regulation and encourages a feeling of safety. The brain is signaling that there is nothing to chase or fix right now. Everything important can wait. This gentle slowing of time perception is not a flaw. It is a feature designed to guide you toward rest without effort. The fifth key change during the brain's night shift involves how it handles self-control. During waking hours, a significant amount of mental energy is spent monitoring behavior, filtering impulses, and staying socially appropriate. At night, this effort decreases. Brain regions responsible for strict self-monitoring become quieter, while areas linked to imagination and free association become more active. This is why thoughts may feel more fluid or dreamlike before sleep. It is also why people often feel more reflective at night. The brain loosens its grip on control, allowing ideas to surface without judgment. This does not mean the brain is becoming careless. It means it is entering a mode where exploration is safer than action. By reducing self-control demands, the brain lowers stress and mental tension. This creates a sense of release that many people feel as they lie down to rest. The mind is no longer on guard. It is gently standing down, trusting that rest is allowed and safe in this quiet moment. All of these changes happen whether or not you are aware of them. The brain does not ask permission to begin its night shift. It simply follows its internal timing, adjusting priorities with quiet precision. Thinking feels different not because something is wrong, but because something is working exactly as intended. Action gives way to maintenance. Urgency gives way to rhythm. Control gives way to ease. These transitions are subtle, often unnoticed, yet deeply important. They protect your mental clarity, emotional balance, and overall well-being. As you continue to rest and listen, this process keeps unfolding in the background, steady and reliable, guiding your mind away from effort and toward restoration, one gentle shift at a time, supported by biological systems that evolved to help humans survive periods of darkness, stillness, and recovery across long stretches of history. As night approaches, One of the first changes many people notice is that thoughts begin to slow down. Ideas that once arrived quickly now take their time. Attention feels wider, less focused on any single thing, and more open to drifting. This is not a sign of mental fatigue or loss of clarity. It is a natural shift in how attention works when the brain prepares for rest. During the day, attention is narrow by necessity. It must stay locked onto tasks, conversations, traffic, schedules, and decisions. That narrow focus requires effort. As evening settles in, the brain gradually relaxes that effort. Attention widens, meaning it is no longer tightly aimed at one goal. Instead, it spreads gently across sensations, memories, and passing thoughts. Scientists have observed that the brain reduces signals that demand quick responses, allowing thoughts to move at a slower pace. This widening of attention makes thinking feel softer and less urgent. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer push for action. They pass through more quietly, often without needing resolution. This is why nighttime thinking can feel reflective rather than driven. The brain is shifting away from performance and toward observation. It is creating mental space, not because something is missing, but because rest requires openness rather than control. This slower rhythm is the mind's way of easing into a state where effort is no longer the priority. One interesting fact about slower thoughts is that they are closely tied to how the brain manages attention filters. During waking hours, your brain constantly filters out information it deems unimportant, allowing you to focus on what matters most. At night, those filters loosen. This does not overwhelm the mind. Instead, it softens it. Research shows that when attention filters relax, the brain allows a broader range of signals to pass through, but at a lower intensity. Sounds, sensations, and internal thoughts are noticed, yet they do not demand reaction. This is why small things, like the sound of a fan or the feeling of a blanket, become more noticeable without being distracting. The brain is not scanning for threats or tasks. It is simply registering experience. This relaxed filtering also explains why creative or unexpected thoughts sometimes appear at night. Without strict attention rules, the mind makes gentle connections it might ignore during the day. These thoughts feel slower because they are not being evaluated or corrected. They are allowed to exist briefly and then fade. This process reduces mental tension and encourages calm. The brain is practicing a form of attention that values presence over productivity, which supports the transition toward sleep. Another key reason thoughts slow down at night has to do with how the brain handles goals. During the day, thinking is often goal-directed. Each thought leads to another step, another decision, another outcome. This creates momentum, which is useful but demanding. At night, goal-driven thinking eases. Studies suggest that the brain reduces activity in areas responsible for planning and future-oriented thinking as sleep approaches. Without strong goals to chase, thoughts lose their forward pressure. They no longer need to go anywhere. Instead, they circle gently or drift away. This makes them feel less urgent and less sticky. Problems that felt pressing earlier may still appear, but they arrive without the same force. The brain is not ignoring them. It is postponing action. This postponement is protective. It prevents mental exhaustion and allows emotional systems to calm. By slowing goal-oriented thinking, the brain gives itself permission to rest without guilt. This change is subtle but powerful. It explains why nighttime thinking often feels philosophical or observational rather than practical. The mind is not trying to solve. It is simply noticing, allowing thoughts to pass like quiet reflections. A fourth factor in slower thinking involves the brain's response to uncertainty. During the day, uncertainty often triggers alertness. The brain wants clarity and control, which speeds up thinking. At night, the brain becomes more tolerant of uncertainty. Research shows that emotional reactivity decreases as attention widens, meaning unclear thoughts cause less discomfort. This reduces the need to mentally resolve every question. Thoughts can remain unfinished without causing stress. This is one reason worries feel different at night. They may still exist, but they lose their sharp edges. The brain is signaling that it is safe to let things remain unresolved for now. This tolerance creates mental quiet. Thoughts slow because they are no longer being pushed toward certainty. They can pause, wander, or fade without consequence. This gentle acceptance is an important part of emotional regulation. By lowering the need for answers, the brain protects itself from overthinking. Slower thoughts are not weaker thoughts. They are thoughts freed from pressure. This freedom supports relaxation and prepares the mind for deeper rest. The way thoughts slow also affects how perception begins to change. As attention widens and thinking softens, the brain shifts focus from internal dialogue to sensory experience. This transition happens gradually. Thoughts become less verbal and more image-based or feeling-based. The brain reduces its reliance on language and analysis, allowing perception to take the lead. This is why people often become more aware of sounds, shadows, or bodily sensations at night. Thinking does not stop. It simply changes form. Researchers have noted that as cognitive speed decreases, sensory awareness increases in a calm, non-threatening way. The mind becomes more receptive than active. This shift supports the transition into sleep by grounding attention in the present moment. Slower thoughts create space for perception to feel smoother and less fragmented. Instead of jumping from idea to idea, the mind begins to rest in gentle awareness. This is not something you need to force. It happens naturally as the brain changes gears. The slowing of thought is the bridge between active thinking and quiet perception. All of this unfolds quietly, without instruction or effort. The brain knows when to slow down. It has practiced this rhythm across countless nights. Thoughts soften not because they are fading away, but because they are no longer needed to lead. Attention widens, urgency fades, and mental space opens. This slower pace allows perception to become richer and calmer, setting the stage for deeper rest. As thinking eases its grip, awareness gently shifts outward and inward at the same time, preparing the mind for the subtle changes that follow as perception itself begins to transform. As night deepens, perception begins to change in a quiet and very deliberate way. The brain does not simply receive less information from the senses. Instead, it chooses to process that information differently. During the day, perception is sharp and detailed because survival and function depend on accuracy. Shapes are defined, sounds are separated, and movement is carefully tracked. At night, the brain gently reduces this level of detail. Scientists studying perception have found that the brain lowers the priority of fine sensory distinctions as rest approaches. This does not mean the senses stop working. It means the brain stops asking them to be precise. Visual edges soften, background sounds blend together, and physical sensations become less specific. This reduction lowers mental noise. The mind no longer needs to constantly label, interpret, and react. Instead, perception becomes more general and less demanding. This shift prepares the brain for inward focus, where internal processes take precedence over external monitoring. It also explains why darkness feels calming rather than confusing. The brain expects less detail at night and adapts accordingly. This change is gradual and steady, unfolding naturally as the evening progresses, allowing perception to become a quiet backdrop rather than the center of attention. One important fact about nighttime perception is that the brain actively filters out unnecessary sensory detail. During waking hours, sensory systems deliver large amounts of information that must be sorted and prioritized. At night, the brain raises the threshold for what it considers important. Studies show that sensory signals still arrive, but fewer of them are passed along for conscious awareness. This filtering reduces stimulation without disconnecting you from your environment. You can still hear a loud sound or feel discomfort, but subtle inputs are softened or ignored. This makes perception feel smoother and less crowded. The brain is protecting itself from overload so it can focus on restoration. This also helps explain why repetitive or steady sounds feel soothing at night. Because the brain is filtering less selectively, it allows consistent signals to fade into the background. The mind does not need to track them. Instead, they become part of a stable sensory field that supports relaxation. This selective filtering is automatic. You do not have to concentrate or force it. The brain adjusts perception quietly, creating a sensory environment that feels simpler and safer. Another interesting change involves how the brain processes visual information in low light. At night, the brain relies less on sharp visual detail and more on general patterns. Researchers have observed that as light decreases, the brain shifts from fine detail processing to broader shape recognition. This makes perception less precise but more efficient. You notice movement, contrast, and overall form rather than exact edges. This shift reduces cognitive effort because fine detail requires more mental energy. By simplifying visual input, the brain conserves resources. This is one reason why dim lighting feels restful. The eyes and brain are no longer working as hard to interpret the world. Visual perception becomes supportive rather than demanding. This change also encourages inward attention because there is less visual information competing for awareness. The mind naturally turns toward thoughts, memories, and internal sensations. This transition happens smoothly, guided by changes in lighting and circadian rhythms, without conscious decision. Sound perception also changes in a subtle but meaningful way at night. During the day, the brain actively separates sounds to identify speech, movement, and potential threats. At night, this separation becomes less strict. The brain blends sound together, especially those that are steady or familiar. Research shows that nighttime auditory processing favors rhythm and consistency over clarity. This makes background sounds feel continuous rather than interruptive. A fan, distant traffic, or soft music becomes a single auditory texture instead of separate events. These blending lowers alertness and reduces the chance of sudden attention shifts. It helps the nervous system remain calm. At the same time, important sounds are still detected. The brain does not turn off vigilance completely. It simply reduces unnecessary detail. This balance allows you to feel safe while remaining at rest. The quieting of sound perception is another way the brain reduces mental noise and supports inward focus. Touch and bodily perception also soften as part of this nighttime shift. During the day, the brain closely monitors physical sensations to support movement and coordination. At night, this monitoring eases. Sensations become broader and less defined. The brain pays more attention to comfort than precision. This is why the feeling of warmth, weight, or stillness becomes more noticeable than specific points of contact. Scientists have found that as attention widens, bodily awareness becomes more generalized. This supports relaxation by reducing the need for constant adjustment. The body is allowed to settle. This change in perception also helps the brain shift away from action-oriented control. Instead of preparing muscles to move, the brain supports stillness. This inward focus allows restorative processes to take place without interference. Perception becomes a gentle presence rather than an active guide. All of these changes work together to create a quieter mental landscape. Sensory detail fades, mental noise lowers, and awareness turns inward. The brain is not losing information. It is choosing simplicity. This prepares the mind for deeper internal processes that require calm and stability. Perception becomes less about the outside world and more about maintaining balance within. As this shift continues, attention naturally follows, moving away from stimulation and toward the subtle rhythms of rest, breathing, and internal experience, guided by systems designed to support recovery, safety, and renewal through the long and quiet hours of night. As night settles in and the mind grows quieter, memory begins to change in a subtle but important way. During the day, memories are often sharp and emotionally charged because they are tied to action, decision-making, and social interaction. At night, the brain shifts its relationship with memory. Instead of using memories to guide behavior, it begins to gently review them. Scientists have observed that the brain replays pieces of the day during periods of rest, but not as exact recordings. These memories are softened, simplified, and reorganized. Details that once felt intense lose some of their emotional weight. The facts may remain, but the feelings attached to them become quieter. This process is not about erasing experiences. It is about protecting emotional balance. By reducing intensity, the brain prevents stress from carrying over too strongly into the next day. This gentle editing happens automatically. You do not have to think about it or guide it. As you rest, the brain quietly decides which emotional tones to keep strong and which to ease. This is why events that felt overwhelming earlier can seem more manageable after a good night's rest. The memory is still there, but it has been placed into a calmer emotional frame, allowing the mind to feel safer and more settled as sleep approaches. One interesting fact about memory editing is that emotion and memory are closely linked, especially during rest. Research shows that when the brain revisits memories at night, emotional centers respond differently than they do during the day. Strong emotional reactions are dialed down, while contextual understanding increases. This means the brain focuses more on meaning than on feeling. A stressful conversation, for example, may be remembered as information rather than as tension. This shift helps the mind make sense of experiences without reliving their discomfort. It also explains why clarity often comes after sleep. The brain has had time to look at memories without emotional pressure. This process supports emotional resilience over time. By regularly softening emotional edges, the brain prevents the buildup of chronic stress. Memory editing is not random. It follows patterns that prioritize well-being. Experiences that are repeated or meaningful are kept, while excessive emotional intensity is reduced. This balance allows you to remember your life accurately without being overwhelmed by it. The mind learns from experience while also protecting itself from unnecessary strain. Another important aspect of memory editing involves how the brain separates memory from immediate reaction. During the day, memories often trigger quick emotional responses because the brain is prepared to act. At night, that readiness fades. Studies suggest that the brain temporarily weakens the link between memory and action as part of rest preparation. This makes memories feel more distant, even if they happened recently. You might recall something without feeling the urge to respond or fix it. This distance is healthy. It allows reflection without urgency. The brain is practicing emotional regulation by creating space between remembering and reacting. This skill carries into waking life, helping people respond more calmly over time. Nighttime memory processing teaches the brain that not every memory requires immediate action. Some can simply exist. This reduces mental pressure and supports long-term emotional stability. The mind becomes better at holding experiences gently rather than gripping them tightly. This change unfolds quietly as you rest, reinforcing a sense of safety and calm that supports deeper sleep. A fourth way the brain edits memory at night is by blending similar experiences together. Instead of storing each moment separately, the brain looks for patterns. Researchers have found that during rest, the brain groups related memories, focusing on shared themes rather than individual details. This pattern building reduces emotional overload. By seeing experiences as part of a larger story, the brain makes them easier to manage. A series of stressful moments becomes a single learning experience rather than many separate pressures. This process also supports understanding and wisdom. The brain is not just storing events. It is extracting lessons. Emotional intensity fades as meaning increases. This shift helps people grow without feeling weighed down by every detail. Pattern-based memory processing is one reason people often wake up with a clearer perspective. The brain has quietly organized experiences into a more manageable form. This organization reduces mental noise and prepares the mind for emotional balance. Memory editing also plays a role in how the brain handles fear and worry. During the day, fear-related memories can stay active as a protective mechanism. At night, the brain reassesses their importance. Studies show that emotional memory centers reduce their activity during rest, allowing fear responses to calm. This does not erase caution. It simply reduces unnecessary alarm. Memories associated with stress are stored with less intensity, making them less likely to trigger strong reactions later. This is essential for mental health. Without this nightly adjustment, the mind would remain on constant alert. By gently lowering fear-related signals, the brain restores a sense of safety. This calm foundation allows emotional regulation systems to work more effectively. The mind becomes better at distinguishing real threats from remembered discomfort. This process supports emotional healing over time, especially after difficult days. All of these memory changes happen quietly in the background, guided by rhythms the brain has followed for a lifetime. Memories are not erased or ignored. They are refined, softened, and placed into context. Emotional intensity gives way to understanding. Reaction gives way to reflection. This gentle editing supports emotional regulation by allowing feelings to settle naturally. As the brain continues this work, emotional systems grow calmer and more balanced, preparing the mind for the next phase of rest where emotions themselves begin to shift and soften, guided by the same steady, protective processes that help the brain recover night after night. As evening arrives, emotions often begin to feel less sharp, less demanding, and easier to hold. This shift is not imagined. It reflects real changes inside the brain as it prepares for rest. During the day, emotional centers stay alert to help you respond to people, problems, and potential threats. These systems are designed to react quickly and strongly when needed. As darkness settles in, the brain slowly reduces this level of emotional readiness. Studies show that areas involved in emotional intensity become less reactive in the evening hours. Signals that once felt urgent begin to soften. Feelings do not disappear, but they lose their sharp edges. This creates a sense of psychological safety. The mind no longer feels like it must respond immediately. Instead, emotions are allowed to exist without pressure. This calming shift helps explain why nighttime reflection often feels gentler than daytime stress. The brain is not ignoring emotions. It is regulating them. By lowering emotional volume, the brain protects itself from overload and prepares the nervous system for rest. This change happens gradually and reliably, following daily biological rhythms that support balance and recovery after hours of emotional engagement with the world. One important fact about this evening calm is that the brain reduces emotional amplification. During the day, emotional signals are often amplified to ensure they are noticed and acted upon. At night, this amplification decreases. Researchers have observed that emotional reactions become less intense even when thoughts remain the same. A worry may still be present, but it feels quieter. This is because the brain lowers the gain on emotional responses. It becomes harder for emotions to spike quickly. This supports emotional stability and prevents minor concerns from escalating. This reduced amplification also allows the brain to process feelings more evenly. Instead of reacting, it observes. This shift is part of emotional regulation, a skill the brain practices daily. By repeatedly calming emotional responses at night, the brain strengthens its ability to manage emotions overall. Over time, this contributes to resilience and emotional balance. The evening calm is not a shutdown. It is a recalibration. Emotions are still meaningful, but they are no longer overwhelming. Another reason emotions soften after dark involves the brain's stress response. During waking hours, stress hormones help keep you alert and responsive. As night approaches, the brain signals the body to reduce these hormones. Lower stress hormone levels mean emotional centers receive fewer alert signals. This naturally lowers emotional intensity. Scientists have found that as stress chemistry decreases, emotional reactions become less reactive. This change creates a sense of safety and comfort. The mind is no longer preparing for challenges. It is preparing for rest. This shift supports relaxation and helps explain why people often feel more vulnerable yet calmer at night. With stress responses quieted, emotions can surface without triggering defense. This makes emotional experiences feel more manageable. The brain is creating an environment where emotions can settle rather than escalate. This calm state supports healthy sleep and emotional processing. A fourth factor involves how the brain changes its focus on social evaluation. During the day, emotional systems are sensitive to social cues, judgments, and interactions. At night, this sensitivity decreases. Research suggests that the brain reduces attention to social threat and comparison as part of rest preparation. This means worries about how others perceive you lose intensity. Emotional reactions tied to social stress soften. This creates psychological safety because the mind feels less watched and less judged. Thoughts about conversations or interactions may still appear, but they carry less emotional weight. The brain is signaling that social performance is no longer required. This allows the nervous system to relax. Emotional energy is conserved rather than spent on evaluation. This reduction in social emotional pressure is an important part of nighttime calm. It allows individuals to feel more at ease with themselves as they prepare for rest. Emotions also feel less sharp because the brain increases its tolerance for emotional ambiguity at night. During the day, unclear emotions can feel uncomfortable, prompting analysis or action. At night, the brain becomes more accepting of mixed or unfinished feelings. Studies show that emotional centers become less insistent on resolution during rest periods. This means emotions do not need to be defined or solved. They can exist quietly without causing distress. This tolerance reduces emotional friction. Feelings are allowed to pass without being labeled or judged. This gentle acceptance supports relaxation and emotional ease. It also prepares the mind for sleep by reducing mental engagement. The brain is practicing emotional patience, allowing experiences to settle naturally. This process is subtle but deeply calming, helping the mind move towards stillness without effort. All of these changes work together to soften emotional experience after dark. Emotional centers quiet down, stress signals fade, and social pressure lifts. The brain creates a state of psychological safety where emotions can rest alongside thoughts without conflict. This safety allows the mind to feel held rather than challenged. Emotions become part of the background rather than the focus. As this calm deepens, the brain continues preparing for rest, gently guiding emotional systems toward balance and ease, setting the stage for the quiet inner shifts that follow as attention turns inward and the sense of self continues to relax. As bedtime approaches, the brain begins to lean toward what feels familiar. This pull toward repetition is not habit alone. It is a built-in preference shaped by how the brain manages safety and effort. Throughout the day, the mind is constantly processing new information, adjusting to changes, and responding to surprises. That takes energy. At night, the brain looks for signals that it can relax, and familiarity provides one of the strongest signals of all. When something is predictable, the brain does not need to analyze it deeply. Patterns it has seen before require less attention and less emotional response. Scientists studying brain activity have found that familiar routines activate fewer alert systems than new experiences. This allows the nervous system to settle. Repetition becomes a shortcut to calm. A familiar bedtime routine, a repeated sound, or a well-known story tells the brain that nothing unexpected is coming. This sense of predictability lowers mental effort and supports rest. The brain is not bored by repetition at night. It is reassured by it. Familiar patterns create a mental environment where vigilance is no longer necessary, allowing the mind to soften and prepare for sleep without resistance or concern. One interesting fact about repetition is that the brain processes repeated information more smoothly each time it appears. This is known through observation of how neural activity changes with familiarity. When something is repeated, the brain responds with less intensity. This reduced response feels calming. At bedtime, this effect is especially helpful. Hearing the same type of voice, the same rhythm, or the same routine allows the brain to settle into a predictable flow. The mind does not need to stay alert. Instead, it glides along the pattern. This is why repeated bedtime rituals can feel deeply comforting, even if they seem simple. The brain recognizes the sequence and relaxes into it. This smooth processing reduces mental noise and lowers stress. Repetition becomes a signal that effort is no longer required. The brain understands that it can let go, knowing what comes next and trusting the pattern to carry it forward gently. Another reason familiar patterns feel so soothing at night is that they reduce uncertainty. During the day, uncertainty keeps the brain alert. It looks for changes, threats, or decisions that need attention. At night, the brain seeks the opposite. Familiar routines remove uncertainty. The brain does not need to guess what will happen next. Research shows that predictability lowers activity in stress-related systems. When the brain knows what to expect, it does not prepare for danger or problem-solving. This creates a feeling of safety. Even small, repeated actions can have this effect. The order of brushing teeth, dimming lights, or lying down becomes meaningful because it signals consistency. The brain reads these patterns as reassurance. This lowers emotional tension and supports relaxation. Familiarity becomes a bridge between wakefulness and rest, guiding the mind away from alertness and toward ease. A fourth way repetition helps the brain at bedtime is by supporting memory and emotional regulation. Familiar patterns remind the brain of past nights that ended safely in sleep. This association is powerful. The brain links routine with rest and recovery. Over time, repeated patterns strengthen this connection. Studies suggest that when routines are consistent, the brain transitions more easily into sleep-related states. Emotional systems calm faster because the brain expects rest to follow. This expectation reduces resistance. The mind does not argue with the moment. It recognizes it. Familiarity also limits emotional surprises. When the sequence is known, emotional responses stay steady. This supports a smooth emotional landing at the end of the day, allowing feelings to settle naturally without being stirred by novelty. Repetition also affects attention in a gentle way. When something is familiar, attention does not need to lock onto it tightly. Instead, it can remain loose and passive. This is ideal for bedtime. The brain is not trying to learn or analyze. It is allowing attention to drift. Familiar sounds or routines provide just enough structure to occupy the mind without engaging it fully. This prevents overthinking while avoiding boredom. The mind rests lightly on the pattern, following it without effort. This balance supports relaxation and prepares the brain for deeper rest. Familiarity acts like a soft guide, keeping attention steady without demand, which is especially comforting in the quiet hours of night. All of these effects show how deeply the brain values familiarity when it is time to rest. Repetition reduces effort, lowers uncertainty, calms emotions, and softens attention. It signals safety in a clear and reliable way. The brain does not crave stimulation at night. It craves consistency. Familiar patterns create a gentle rhythm the mind can trust. As the brain continues to follow these rhythms, it settles more fully into a state of ease, allowing internal processes to take over while awareness rests lightly on what feels known, steady, and quietly reassuring. As the day winds down and conscious effort begins to fade, another system quietly steps forward. The subconscious mind has been active all along, but at night it takes a more noticeable lead. During waking hours, conscious thinking directs behavior, makes decisions, and evaluates choices. This requires focus and energy. As evening arrives, that effort naturally decreases. The brain begins to rely more on automatic processes that have been shaped by habit, experience, and instinct. These processes do not require active thought. They guide breathing, posture, routine actions, and even emotional responses without asking for attention. Scientists have observed that as conscious control relaxes, deeper brain systems become more influential. This shift allows the mind to conserve energy while maintaining balance and safety. The subconscious does not rush or analyze. It follows patterns it already knows. This is why familiar actions feel easier at night. You do not think about each step. You simply move through them. This transition is gentle and reliable. It marks a change in leadership within the mind, where effort gives way to flow and intention gives way to automatic guidance. One interesting fact about the subconscious is that it processes information continuously, even when conscious awareness is quiet. Research shows that automatic brain systems monitor the environment, body signals, and internal states at all times. At night, when conscious thought slows, these systems handle more responsibility. They regulate breathing, adjust muscle tone, and maintain internal balance without interruption. This allows conscious awareness to rest. The subconscious is efficient because it does not debate or question. It responds based on learned patterns. This efficiency is calming. The mind does not need to stay alert to manage basic functions. Trusting these systems reduces mental effort and supports relaxation. The subconscious has practiced these tasks for a lifetime. It does not need instruction. By allowing it to lead, the brain creates space for rest and recovery, knowing that essential functions remain steady and reliable. Another key aspect of subconscious leadership involves habit. Habits are behaviors stored in automatic memory systems. At night, these systems become more dominant. Actions like preparing for bed or settling into a familiar position happen with little thought. This is not laziness. It is efficiency. Studies suggest that when conscious control weakens, habit systems provide structure and predictability. This reduces uncertainty and mental load. The brain prefers to rely on what it already knows when energy is low. Habitual actions feel comforting because they require no decision-making. They unfold smoothly. This reliance on habit also protects the mind from overthinking. The subconscious keeps things simple. It follows established paths, allowing conscious awareness to drift. This simplicity supports emotional calm and prepares the mind for deeper rest. The subconscious also plays a major role in emotional regulation at night. When conscious effort fades, emotional reactions are less likely to be analyzed or judged. Automatic emotional systems guide responses instead. These systems tend to favor balance and safety. Research shows that subconscious emotional processing is slower and less intense than conscious rumination. Feelings may still arise, but they are less likely to spiral. The subconscious does not argue with emotions. It allows them to exist and pass. This reduces emotional friction. The mind feels steadier because it is no longer actively managing feelings. Instead, it is allowing natural regulation to occur. This gentle emotional guidance supports relaxation and helps prevent mental exhaustion. Another interesting fact is that the subconscious helps coordinate the transition from wakefulness to sleep. As conscious attention fades, subconscious systems begin adjusting brain rhythms and body signals. These changes happen gradually. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and muscle tension decreases. You do not need to command these changes. The subconscious handles them automatically. Studies show that this coordination is essential for healthy sleep onset. Without subconscious guidance, falling asleep would require effort. Instead, the mind simply follows the lead of automatic processes. This transition feels natural because it is. The subconscious has managed this shift thousands of times. It knows the path and follows it quietly. As the subconscious takes the lead, conscious thought becomes less central. Attention softens, effort fades, and automatic processes guide behavior with quiet confidence. This shift allows the mind to rest without losing stability. The subconscious maintains balance while conscious awareness drifts. Together, They create a state where action is unnecessary and presence is enough, allowing the mind to continue its gentle movement toward deeper calm, guided by systems that work best when they are trusted to operate on their own. As the day comes to a close, the brain naturally begins to favor simplicity. Decisions that once required careful thought now feel easier, sometimes even automatic. This is because the brain shifts toward using mental shortcuts, quiet decision-making processes that reduce effort and conserve energy. During the day, the mind weighs options, compares details, and considers outcomes. At night, that level of analysis becomes unnecessary. The brain prefers paths that feel familiar, safe, and uncomplicated. These shortcuts are not careless guesses. They are efficient tools shaped by experience. Scientists studying decision-making have found that when mental energy is low, the brain relies more on patterns it already trusts. This makes choices feel smoother and less stressful. You may notice that small decisions no longer feel important, or that you naturally postpone choices until morning. This is the brain protecting itself. By reducing complexity, it lowers mental strain and prepares for rest. Quiet decisions are part of a healthy rhythm. They allow the mind to stay functional without demanding attention. The brain is not giving up control. It is choosing efficiency. This preference for simplicity supports calm and creates space for relaxation, allowing thoughts to move gently without pressure or urgency. One interesting fact about mental shortcuts is that they often lead to more emotional comfort at night. When the brain simplifies decisions, it also reduces doubt. Doubt requires comparison and evaluation, which can increase stress. At night, the brain limits these processes. Research shows that simplified decision-making lowers activity in areas linked to worry and conflict. This is why nighttime choices often feel emotionally neutral. You may choose what feels easiest rather than what feels optimal. This is not a flaw. It is a feature designed to support rest. The brain understands that not every decision needs to be perfect. By choosing what feels familiar or comfortable, it avoids unnecessary emotional activation. This supports psychological safety. Quiet decisions allow the mind to remain settled, reducing internal debate and allowing emotions to stay calm. Another key reason the brain prefers simplicity at night is limited mental energy. Throughout the day, attention and decision-making draw from a shared pool of resources. As evening arrives, those resources naturally decrease. Scientists have observed that the brain compensates by relying more on automatic judgments. These judgments require less effort because they skip detailed analysis. Instead, they draw on past experience. This is why familiar routines feel so appealing at night. The brain is conserving energy for essential processes like emotional regulation and memory organization. Simplifying decisions is part of that conservation strategy. The mind is not being lazy. It is being strategic. By reducing cognitive load, the brain creates conditions that support recovery. This makes quiet decisions an important part of healthy rest. Mental shortcuts also help the brain maintain consistency in behavior. At night, consistency feels safe. When the brain chooses familiar options, it reduces unpredictability. Research suggests that predictable choices lower stress responses. This is especially helpful as the nervous system prepares for sleep. Simple decisions create a stable mental environment. The brain does not need to adapt or adjust. It can relax into known patterns. This stability supports emotional calm and prevents sudden shifts in attention. Quiet decisions keep the mind steady, guiding it toward rest without disruption. Another fascinating aspect of nighttime decision-making is that it reduces self-judgment. During the day, decisions are often evaluated afterward. At night, this evaluation softens. The brain is less likely to critique its own choices. This reduces internal pressure. Studies show that reduced self-monitoring at night supports emotional ease. You are less likely to replay decisions or question yourself. This allows thoughts to pass without attachment. Quiet decisions do not demand explanation. They simply happen. This lack of judgment supports relaxation and helps prevent rumination. The brain is signaling that evaluation can wait. Rest comes first. As mental shortcuts guide behavior, conscious decision-making gently steps aside. The brain favors ease, familiarity, and low effort. Quiet decisions reduce mental noise and support calm. They allow the mind to function without strain, maintaining balance as awareness softens. This simplicity creates a smooth transition toward deeper rest, where choices no longer require thought and the mind can continue settling into stillness, guided by patterns that feel known, safe, and quietly reassuring. As sleep approaches, many people notice a gentle shift in how control feels in the mind. Thoughts that once demanded management begin to loosen their grip. The need to plan, decide, or stay alert slowly fades. This change is not a loss of ability. It is a natural transition built into how the brain prepares for rest. During the day, control systems work constantly. They guide attention, manage behavior, and keep track of goals. This effort keeps life moving, but it also requires energy. As night arrives, the brain begins to reduce this effort. Studies have shown that areas responsible for active control become less dominant in the evening. This allows other systems to take over, systems designed for balance rather than direction. As control eases, the mind feels lighter. Thoughts no longer need to be corrected or pushed forward. They can drift without consequence. This is often described as the feeling of letting go. It feels natural because it is. The brain is shifting away from command and toward trust. It trusts that things can pause. It trusts that nothing needs immediate action. This shift creates relief. The mind no longer feels responsible for holding everything together. Instead, it rests in the moment, allowing awareness to soften and effort to fall away. One interesting fact about letting go is that it is supported by changes in attention. During the day, attention is tightly controlled to meet demands. At night, attention widens and becomes less directed. Research suggests that when attention is less focused, the need for control decreases. You are no longer tracking every detail or outcome. This makes it easier to release mental grip. Thoughts pass through awareness without being held. This does not mean the mind is empty. It means it is open. Letting go feels possible because attention is no longer locking onto problems. The brain is choosing a broader view where details matter less. This widening of attention reduces pressure and allows the mind to relax. It supports a sense of ease that feels both physical and emotional. The mind is not trying to manage experience. It is simply allowing it. Another reason control feels less important at night has to do with emotional safety. During waking hours, control helps manage risk and social interaction. At night, the environment is typically calmer and less demanding. The brain recognizes this. Studies show that threat detection systems reduce their activity in the evening. When perceived threat lowers, the need for control follows. The mind no longer feels it must stay prepared. This creates a sense of safety that supports letting go. Emotional systems relax, making it easier to release concerns. Worries may still exist, but they feel distant. The brain is signaling that vigilance can rest. This safety allows control to soften without fear. Letting go becomes a natural response to a quieter world. Letting go is also connected to how the brain handles uncertainty at night. During the day, uncertainty often triggers control. The mind wants answers and clarity. At night, tolerance for uncertainty increases. Research suggests that the brain becomes more comfortable with unfinished thoughts and unanswered questions as sleep approaches. This reduces the urge to resolve everything. Thoughts do not need closure. They can remain open without causing distress. This acceptance makes letting go easier. The mind stops chasing certainty. It allows experiences to be incomplete. This reduces mental effort and supports calm. Control is no longer required to feel secure. The brain trusts that uncertainty can wait until morning. Another important aspect involves the body's role in letting go. As the nervous system shifts toward rest, physical tension decreases. Muscles relax, breathing slows, and posture softens. These physical changes send signals back to the brain. When the body releases tension, the mind often follows. Studies have shown that reduced muscle tension is linked to decreased cognitive control. The body and mind work together. As the body settles, the brain interprets this as permission to ease mental effort. Letting go feels more possible because the body is no longer preparing for action. This physical relaxation supports emotional and mental release, creating a full-body sense of ease. As control continues to soften, the mind enters a state where effort feels unnecessary. The need to guide thoughts fades. Awareness remains, but without direction. This state is deeply restorative. Letting go is not something you do. It is something that happens when the brain no longer needs control. The mind trusts its systems, the body rests, and attention drifts gently. This transition prepares the brain for deeper stages of rest, where awareness becomes even lighter and the sense of self continues to loosen, guided by rhythms that favor ease over effort and presence over control. As night settles in, time begins to feel different in a quiet and noticeable way. Minutes stretch, hours soften, and the steady ticking of the day loses its grip on awareness. This change is not imagined. It reflects how the brain naturally alters its sense of time as it prepares for rest. During the day, time tracking is precise because it needs to be. Schedules, deadlines, and coordination all depend on accurate timing. The brain constantly measures duration, sequence, and urgency. As evening arrives, that precision is no longer necessary. Studies show that brain regions involved in strict time monitoring reduce their activity at night. This makes the passage of time feel less defined. Moments blend together more easily. The mind stops counting and starts flowing. This shift supports relaxation because urgency depends on precision. When time feels loose, pressure fades. The brain is not falling behind. It is intentionally stepping away from measurement. This change allows awareness to rest in the present rather than moving constantly toward the next moment. Time becomes something you experience rather than manage, creating a calm mental environment where effort slowly gives way to ease. One interesting fact about nighttime time perception is that attention plays a major role in how time is felt. During the day, focused attention sharpens time awareness. When you watch the clock, time feels exact. At night, attention widens and softens. Research shows that when attention is less focused, time feels less precise. The brain stops marking each moment. Instead, it experiences time as a continuous flow. This makes minutes feel longer or shorter without clear boundaries. This change is calming because it removes the need to monitor progress. You are no longer counting how long something takes. You are simply present. This softer sense of time reduces mental pressure and allows the mind to relax. The brain is not losing track. It is choosing a mode where precision is unnecessary. This supports rest by reducing the mental effort required to stay oriented in time. Another reason time feels different at night involves memory. The brain uses memory to track time by comparing the present moment to past events. During the day, memory is actively engaged in sequencing activities. At night, memory processing shifts toward consolidation rather than tracking. Studies suggest that when memory is focused inward, time awareness becomes less sharp. Without constant reference points, the mind experiences time more loosely. This is why evenings can feel both slow and fast at the same time. The brain is not building a detailed timeline. It is allowing moments to pass without labeling them. This reduces cognitive load and supports relaxation. Time becomes less about progression and more about presence. This change helps the mind detach from urgency and move toward rest. A fourth factor is emotional state. Emotions strongly influence time perception. Stress and excitement make time feel fast or pressured. Calm emotions soften time. At night, emotional centers quiet down, reducing arousal. Research shows that lower emotional intensity is linked to a slower, less defined sense of time. When emotions are calm, the brain has no reason to rush. Time stretches gently. This creates a sense of spaciousness that supports relaxation. Without emotional urgency, the mind no longer pushes forward. It rests in the moment. This emotional quiet allows time to feel open rather than restrictive. The brain is signaling that there is no immediate demand, allowing awareness to settle. The body also contributes to this shift in time perception. As night approaches, physical rhythms slow. Heart rate decreases, breathing deepens, and movement becomes minimal. These bodily changes feed back into the brain. Studies have shown that slower bodily rhythms are associated with a slower sense of time. When the body moves less, the mind follows. Time feels less segmented because there are fewer physical markers of change. This physical stillness supports mental stillness. The brain interprets the body's calm as a cue to release time pressure. This coordination between body and mind helps create a unified sense of ease, where time no longer feels demanding. As the brain tracks time less precisely, relaxation becomes easier. Without constant measurement, the mind releases urgency. Time becomes something that unfolds rather than something that must be managed. This gentle shift allows awareness to settle into the present, free from deadlines and expectations. The brain continues its movement toward rest, guided by rhythms that favor softness over precision, allowing moments to drift naturally as attention grows quieter and the sense of time fades into the background of calm experience. More than 80% of the thoughts people replay at night involve other people, conversations, expressions, moments of connection, or things left unsaid. Yet as night deepens, those same social thoughts often lose their sharpness. What once felt awkward, tense, or emotionally loaded begins to soften. This is not coincidence. It reflects a real change in how the brain processes social information in low arousal states. During the day, the brain treats social cues as high priority. Faces, tone of voice, and social outcomes matter deeply because they affect belonging and safety. At night, that urgency fades. Studies show that brain systems responsible for monitoring social threat and evaluation become less active as arousal drops. Social memories may still surface, but they arrive with less intensity. The mind is no longer preparing to respond or defend. It is observing without pressure. This shift creates emotional distance that feels relieving. The brain is not dismissing relationships. It is giving them space. By lowering social alertness, the mind protects itself from emotional overload and prepares for rest. This is why nighttime reflection often feels gentler. Social thoughts are still there, but they no longer demand correction, explanation, or judgment. They simply pass through awareness, quieter than before. One important fact about social thoughts at night is that the brain reduces its focus on social comparison. During waking hours, comparison helps navigate social hierarchies and norms. At night, this function becomes less useful. Research suggests that when arousal decreases, the brain pays less attention to how one measures up to others. Thoughts like, "How did I come across?" or "What do they think of me?" lose emotional force. The brain is no longer scanning for approval or disapproval. This reduces anxiety and self-criticism. Social thoughts become more neutral. This shift supports psychological safety by allowing the mind to rest from constant evaluation. Without comparison, there is less pressure to perform or explain. The brain recognizes that social outcomes are not immediately relevant. This allows emotional systems to calm. The mind feels freer because it is no longer measuring itself against imagined standards. This reduction in comparison is one reason nighttime feels emotionally lighter, even when social memories appear. Another reason social worries soften at night involves the brain's reduced sensitivity to social threat. During the day, the brain is alert to signs of rejection or conflict. This sensitivity keeps social bonds intact but also increases stress. At night, threat detection systems quiet down. Studies show that low arousal states reduce the brain's tendency to interpret social memories as dangerous or urgent. A comment that felt hurtful earlier may seem less personal later. The brain is not minimizing experience. It is reassessing risk. By lowering perceived threat, the mind allows social thoughts to exist without triggering defensive reactions. This creates a sense of safety that supports rest. The brain understands that no immediate social response is required. This allows emotional reactions to soften naturally. Social thoughts also change because the brain shifts away from prediction. During the day, the mind constantly predicts how others might react in the future. At night, predictive systems slow down. Research indicates that future-oriented thinking decreases as arousal lowers. This means the brain spends less time imagining upcoming social scenarios. Without prediction, social worries lose momentum. Thoughts are no longer rehearsals for future interactions. They become reflections instead. This shift reduces anxiety because anticipation often fuels worry. By focusing less on what might happen, the brain allows social thoughts to settle. This supports emotional calm and prepares the mind for sleep. Another key factor is reduced self-monitoring. During waking hours, the brain closely monitors behavior to maintain social appropriateness. At night, this monitoring eases. Studies suggest that as conscious control relaxes, self-judgment decreases. Social thoughts are no longer analyzed for mistakes or improvements. This reduces rumination. The mind stops replaying interactions to fix them. Instead, thoughts appear briefly and fade. This lack of self-monitoring supports relaxation. The brain is signaling that performance is over for the day. There is nothing left to prove. This release from self-evaluation allows emotional systems to rest. As arousal continues to drop, social thoughts naturally soften. Evaluation fades, threat decreases, prediction slows, and self-monitoring relaxes. The brain creates a quiet emotional space where relationships can exist without demand. Social memories lose intensity and become part of a broader mental landscape rather than the center of attention. This gentle softening allows the mind to feel less alone and less pressured, supporting a calm transition toward deeper rest as awareness continues to turn inward and the mental world grows quieter and more spacious. Throughout the day, your brain is constantly predicting what might happen next. It scans the environment, anticipates outcomes, and prepares responses before anything actually occurs. This predictive process keeps you safe and organized, but it also requires continuous mental effort. As night approaches, this forecasting system begins to slow down. The brain recognizes that the need for constant prediction has passed. Studies show that areas involved in anticipating future events reduce their activity in low arousal states. This change is subtle, yet deeply calming. Thoughts about what could go wrong tomorrow lose urgency. The mind stops rehearsing conversations, imagining problems, or preparing defenses. This is not because the brain is ignoring reality. It is because reality, in this moment, no longer requires anticipation. The predictive brain steps back, allowing awareness to rest in what is already here. This shift lowers mental tension and creates a sense of ease. When the brain stops forecasting threats, it no longer needs to stay on alert. Muscles relax, breathing slows, and the mind feels less crowded. This slowing of prediction is one of the most important transitions the brain makes each night. It allows the nervous system to move from readiness to recovery, creating the foundation for deep rest and emotional balance. One important fact about prediction is that it is closely tied to stress. During the day, prediction helps avoid danger, but it also activates stress responses. When the brain constantly imagines possible problems, it keeps the body prepared. At night, this preparation becomes unnecessary. Research shows that as predictive activity decreases, stress-related signals decline as well. This is why worries feel quieter after dark. The brain is no longer scanning for threats. Instead, it assumes relative safety. This assumption allows emotional systems to settle. Thoughts about the future may still appear, but they no longer trigger strong reactions. The brain is not dismissing concerns. It is postponing them. By reducing predictive stress, the mind protects itself from exhaustion. This nightly reduction in forecasting is essential for long-term mental health. Without it, the brain would remain in a constant state of alert, never fully resting. Slowing prediction is how the brain signals that it is safe to relax. Another reason the predictive brain slows down involves attention. Prediction requires focused attention on possible outcomes. At night, attention widens and softens. Research suggests that when attention is less focused, predictive thinking becomes less precise. The brain stops filling in future scenarios. Instead, it allows thoughts to remain incomplete. This reduces mental load. Without detailed predictions, the mind feels lighter. You are no longer mentally traveling ahead of yourself. You are staying closer to the present moment. This shift supports calm and helps explain why nighttime feels less pressured. The brain is not losing its ability to predict. It is choosing not to use it. This choice allows awareness to rest without being pulled forward. The brain also slows prediction because memory processing changes at night. During the day, memory is used to anticipate future events. At night, memory turns inward. Studies show that the brain focuses more on organizing past experiences than on planning future ones. This inward focus reduces predictive loops. Thoughts stop cycling between memory and anticipation. Instead, memory is reviewed for meaning rather than for preparation. This reduces anxiety because anticipation often amplifies emotion. By pausing prediction, the brain creates emotional distance. Experiences are stored without being projected forward. This supports emotional regulation and helps the mind settle. Another key factor is reduced threat sensitivity. Prediction often centers on avoiding harm. At night, threat detection systems quiet down. Research indicates that when arousal drops, the brain interprets fewer situations as dangerous. Without perceived threat, prediction loses purpose. The mind no longer feels the need to imagine worst-case scenarios. This creates psychological safety. Thoughts can pass without triggering alarm. The brain trusts that nothing immediate requires action. This trust allows prediction to rest, supporting a deeper sense of calm. As the predictive brain slows, mental space opens. The mind no longer feels driven to stay ahead of experience. Awareness settles into the present, free from constant forecasting. This slowing is not passive. It is an active, protective process. By easing prediction, the brain reduces stress, conserves energy, and prepares for restorative rest. Thoughts become quieter, emotions steadier, and the sense of urgency fades, allowing the mind to continue drifting towards stillness as awareness grows lighter and the inner world becomes calm and unpressured. As night deepens, attention begins to change its character. During the day, focus is something you apply. You aim it, hold it, and adjust it to meet demands. This requires effort. As evening arrives, that effort fades, and attention begins to drift on its own. This drifting is not distraction. It is a natural shift toward passive focus. The brain no longer asks attention to stay fixed. Instead, it allows awareness to float gently between sensations, thoughts, and sounds. Studies show that brain systems responsible for sustained attention reduce their activity in low arousal states. This makes focus feel softer and less controlled. You may notice that you are still aware, but not concentrating. This is intentional. Passive attention reduces mental strain and allows the mind to rest without becoming empty. The brain is not trying to follow anything closely. It is allowing experience to unfold without effort. This change supports relaxation because effort itself can keep the mind alert. When attention drifts freely, there is no task to complete and no goal to reach. Awareness becomes spacious. Thoughts appear and fade without being pulled into focus. This drifting is one of the clearest signs that the mind is transitioning away from active engagement and toward rest, guided by rhythms that favor ease over control. One interesting fact about passive attention is that it requires less energy than focused attention. During the day, focused attention draws heavily on mental resources. At night, the brain conserves energy by allowing attention to relax. Research shows that when attention becomes passive, the brain shifts toward slower, more synchronized activity patterns. This feels calming because there is less internal effort. You are not directing awareness. It is simply present. This low-energy state supports recovery. The brain can continue processing internally without competing demands. Passive attention also reduces the chance of overthinking. Without tight focus, thoughts are less likely to loop. They pass through awareness briefly and then dissolve. This makes the mind feel quieter. The brain is choosing a mode that supports rest by minimizing effort while maintaining gentle awareness. This balance allows you to remain conscious without being engaged. Another reason attention drifts at night involves reduced motivation. During the day, attention is driven by goals and rewards. At night, motivation systems slow down. Studies suggest that when motivation decreases, attention naturally loosens. There is no strong reason to stay focused. This absence of drive allows attention to wander without frustration. The mind no longer pushes itself to stay on track. Instead, it follows whatever arises. This wandering feels comfortable because there is no expectation to perform. Passive attention supports emotional ease by removing pressure. You are not trying to understand or solve anything. The brain accepts whatever comes into awareness without resistance. This acceptance helps the mind settle and prepares it for deeper rest. Passive attention also changes how the brain processes sensory input. During focused attention, sensory information is evaluated and prioritized. When attention drifts, sensory input is experienced without analysis. Research shows that this mode reduces mental labeling. Sounds are heard, sensations are felt, but they are not categorized. This reduces cognitive load. The mind does not need to interpret. It simply receives. This sensory openness feels soothing because it keeps awareness grounded without effort. Passive attention allows perception to flow smoothly, supporting calm. The brain is not filtering aggressively or reacting. It is letting experience be. This creates a gentle connection to the present moment that feels restful rather than demanding. Another important aspect of drifting attention is that it supports emotional regulation. When attention is forced, emotions can feel intense. When attention is passive, emotions soften. Studies indicate that passive awareness reduces emotional reactivity. Feelings are noticed but not amplified. This makes emotional experiences feel manageable. The mind is not focusing on them, so they lose intensity. Passive attention allows emotions to exist quietly without being examined. This reduces mental strain and supports relaxation. The brain is practicing a form of emotional rest, where feelings are allowed but not engaged. As attention continues to drift without effort, awareness becomes lighter. There is no need to hold focus or direct it. The mind rests in gentle observation. This state feels natural because it aligns with how the brain prepares for sleep. Passive attention creates space for internal processes to unfold while conscious effort fades. The brain no longer asks awareness to do anything. It simply allows it to be, floating softly as the mind continues its steady movement toward deeper calm, guided by rhythms that favor stillness, openness, and ease over intention and control. As the day comes to an end, many people notice that their sense of who they are begins to soften. The roles, labels, and expectations that felt solid during the day lose some of their weight. This is not confusion. It is a natural shift in how the brain represents the self as it prepares for rest. During waking hours, identity is actively maintained. The brain keeps track of responsibilities, social roles, memories, preferences, and goals. This constant self-monitoring helps guide behavior, but it also requires effort. As night approaches, the brain gradually reduces this effort. Studies show that areas involved in self-referential thinking become less active in low arousal states. This makes the sense of self feel quieter and less rigid. You are still aware, but you are less defined. Thoughts are no longer framed as "about me" in the same way. This softening creates relief. The mind no longer needs to defend or explain identity. It can simply exist. This change supports rest by reducing mental tension. When the self loosens, there is less to manage. Awareness becomes more spacious, and the mind feels lighter, allowing it to drift towards sleep without carrying the full structure of daytime identity. One interesting fact about the quieting sense of self is that it is closely linked to reduced self-evaluation. During the day, the brain frequently evaluates actions, thoughts, and emotions in relation to identity. At night, this evaluation eases. Research suggests that when self-monitoring decreases, the brain spends less time judging itself. Thoughts are no longer filtered through questions like, "What does this say about me?" This reduces emotional pressure. Without constant self-assessment, experiences feel less personal and less charged. The mind can observe thoughts and feelings without attaching them to identity. This creates calm because there is no need to defend or improve the self in this moment. The brain understands that evaluation can pause. This pause allows awareness to rest without carrying the weight of self-definition. Another reason identity feels less rigid before sleep involves memory integration. During the day, memory supports identity by reinforcing personal narratives. At night, memory processing shifts away from narrative and toward organization. Studies show that the brain reviews memories more for pattern than for story during rest. This reduces the sense of a continuous personal timeline. Without constant narrative reinforcement, identity feels less fixed. You may recall moments from your life, but they do not strongly define you in the moment. This creates a sense of distance from the self-story. The mind is no longer actively telling itself who it is. This quieting supports relaxation because identity no longer needs maintenance. The brain is not losing the self. It is simply setting it down temporarily. A fourth factor in the softening of identity is reduced social awareness. Identity is strongly shaped by social context. During the day, the brain tracks how it appears to others. At night, social monitoring decreases. Research indicates that when arousal drops, the brain pays less attention to social roles and expectations. This reduces the need to perform or conform. Without social pressure, identity feels simpler. You are not a role or a title. You are just present. This reduction in social framing allows the sense of self to relax. The mind feels less observed and less defined by others' perspectives. This creates psychological safety, making it easier to let go of rigid self-concepts. Identity also softens because the brain reduces future-oriented thinking at night. Much of identity is tied to plans, goals, and aspirations. At night, predictive systems slow down. Studies suggest that when future thinking decreases, identity becomes less goal-driven. You are no longer defined by what you need to do or become. This removes pressure. The self no longer needs to progress. It can rest. This state feels freeing because it releases the mind from constant self-direction. Identity becomes a quiet background rather than an active project. As all these changes come together, the sense of self grows quieter and more fluid. Evaluation fades, narrative loosens, social roles soften, and future focus dissolves. The brain creates a state where identity no longer demands attention. Awareness remains, but without a strong center. This gentle quiet allows the mind to rest deeply, free from the need to define itself, as attention continues to soften and consciousness moves toward a calm, open state where experience exists without labels or boundaries. Rest is often treated as something you have to earn or learn, but the truth is much simpler. Rest is a psychological skill your brain already knows how to perform. It has been practicing it since before you were born. Every night, without instructions or effort, the brain shifts its priorities, quiets its systems, and moves toward balance. This is not accidental. It is built in. During the day, the mind works hard to manage the world. At night, it knows how to step back. Rest is not the absence of activity. It is a different kind of activity, one that favors repair, stability, and renewal. When you lie still and allow the day to fade, the brain does not wait for permission. It begins its work automatically. This means you do not have to force yourself to relax. You do not need to empty your mind or control your thoughts. Rest happens when effort stops getting in the way. The brain recognizes familiar signals of safety, stillness, and repetition, and it responds by guiding itself toward calm. This understanding can be reassuring. You are not doing rest wrong. You are simply allowing a process that already exists to unfold at its own pace, following rhythms that have guided human minds for generations. One important thing to understand about rest is that it improves with trust, not control. Many people try to rest by managing every detail, but the brain rests best when it is allowed to lead. Psychological research shows that the more people try to force relaxation, the more alert the brain can become. Effort keeps systems active. Trust allows them to settle. When you stop checking whether you are resting correctly, the brain receives a clear message that nothing needs attention. This message lowers arousal and supports calm. Rest works the same way breathing does. You can control it for a while, but it functions best on its own. When you let go, the body and mind return to their natural rhythm. Rest as a skill is not about doing more. It is about doing less and allowing automatic systems to guide the process. This shift from effort to trust is subtle, but it changes everything. It turns rest from a task into a state the brain naturally enters when conditions are right. Another important aspect of rest as a psychological skill is repetition. The brain learns through repetition, and rest becomes easier each time it is allowed to happen without resistance. When you rest in a similar way night after night, the brain strengthens the pathways that support calm. Studies show that consistent rest patterns make it easier for the brain to transition into low arousal states. This is why familiar routines feel comforting. They are reminders that the brain has done this before. Each time you allow rest to unfold, the brain becomes more confident in the process. Over time, rest begins to arrive more quickly and with less effort. This does not mean every night will be the same. It means the brain knows the direction. Even on restless nights, the skill is still there. The brain is still adjusting, still quieting, still guiding itself toward balance. Trusting this process reduces frustration and supports patience. Rest is not something you achieve. It is something you return to. Rest also works because the brain is designed to seek balance. Throughout the day, systems become active and alert. At night, the brain naturally looks for the opposite state. Psychological balance depends on this rhythm. Research shows that without regular rest, emotional regulation, memory, and attention all suffer. The brain needs periods of low demand to reset. This reset does not require conscious effort. It requires permission. When you stop asking the brain to stay sharp, it begins to soften. When you stop monitoring your thoughts, they slow down. When you stop trying to fix how you feel, emotions settle. Rest as a skill means recognizing that the brain already knows what balance feels like. It only needs space to find it. This perspective can be deeply comforting. You are not broken if rest feels difficult sometimes. You are human. The brain adjusts gradually, guided by signals of safety and stillness rather than force. Another gentle truth about rest is that it does not depend on silence or emptiness. Many people believe they must clear their minds to rest, but the brain does not require emptiness. It requires low pressure. Thoughts can exist without disrupting rest when they are not being engaged. Research shows that passive awareness allows rest to deepen even when the mind is active. You do not need to stop thinking. You only need to stop chasing thoughts. When you listen without effort, when you allow sounds and words to pass through awareness, the brain relaxes. This is why calm narration and steady rhythms can support rest so effectively. They give the mind something gentle to rest on without demanding focus. Rest as a skill includes knowing that presence is enough. You do not need to do anything special. You are already participating by being here. As this journey through the mind comes to a close, it is worth remembering that rest is not separate from who you are. It is part of you. The same brain that carried you through the day knows how to carry you into rest. Nothing needs to be solved or improved in this moment. You can let the words continue in the background or fade into quiet. If you find this space helpful, you are welcome to return to it anytime. And if you'd like more gentle explorations like this, you can subscribe and stay connected. For now, there is nothing left to do. The brain knows the way. You can simply allow it to guide you the rest of the night, settling naturally, one calm moment at a time.